The satisfaction of watching my former boss's face drain of color as he realized his biggest client had just become my newest investor was worth every sleepless night I'd endured over the past 18 months. The irony was delicious. The very unconventional methods that had gotten me fired from Sterling & Associates were now reshaping the entire consulting industry. And everyone wanted a piece of what I'd built. My name is Natalie Pierce, and this is the story of how betrayal became my greatest teacher. 2 years ago, I was a senior analyst at Sterling & Associates, one of the most prestigious management consulting firms in Chicago. I'd clawed my way up from junior associate to senior analyst in just 4 years, earning recognition for my innovative problem-solving approaches and ability to see solutions others missed. My methods were unconventional, sure, but they delivered results that consistently exceeded client expectations. The trouble began when I proposed what I called human-centered disruption analysis for our biggest client, Morrison Financial Group. Traditional consulting firms would analyze market data, competitive positioning, and financial metrics to recommend restructuring or cost-cutting measures. My approach involved embedding with frontline employees, understanding their daily challenges, and identifying efficiency improvements that came from the bottom up rather than top down. David Sterling, the firm's managing partner and son of the founder, had always been skeptical of my methods. He was old school, believing that consulting should be about impressive PowerPoint presentations and executive-level recommendations that justified enormous fees. My approach threatened that model because it suggested that sometimes the best solutions came from listening to the people actually doing the work. Natalie, your methods are too time-intensive and, frankly, unprofessional. David had said during our last performance review, clients hire us for our expertise, not to conduct anthropological studies of their workforce. I'd argued that my approach had consistently delivered better long-term results than traditional consulting methods. But David was more concerned with billable hours and maintaining the firm's reputation among Chicago's corporate elite. He wanted consultants who looked the part and followed established protocols, not someone who spent time in factory break rooms and customer service call centers. The final straw came when I presented my findings on Morrison Financial Group. Instead of recommending the typical middle management layoffs and process automation, I proposed a radical restructuring that would eliminate several executive positions while empowering frontline employees with decision-making authority. The proposal would save Morrison more money than traditional cost-cutting measures while improving employee satisfaction and customer service. Morrison's CEO, Patricia Morrison, was intrigued. She'd inherited the company from her father and was looking for ways to modernize while maintaining the family-oriented culture that had made the business successful. My proposal aligned perfectly with her vision. David, however, was horrified. You're recommending they fire executives while keeping lower-level employees. That's not how business works. Natalie, we maintain relationships with these executives. They're our network, our future client base. But the data clearly shows that middle management is creating bottlenecks. I countered. By eliminating these positions and redistributing decision-making authority, Morrison Financial can reduce costs by 30% while improving response times and customer satisfaction. David's face had turned red. You're talking about destroying the very relationships that sustain this industry. No executive will want to work with us if they think we're going to recommend their elimination. The meeting with Morrison Financial Group was scheduled for the following week. I spent the weekend refining my presentation, confident that the data would speak for itself. Morrison's leadership team would see the value in my approach, and even David would have to acknowledge that unconventional methods could deliver superior results. Monday morning arrived with an email from David requesting to see me in his office immediately. I found him sitting behind his mahogany desk, looking more serious than I'd ever seen him. Natalie, I've made a decision about the Morrison presentation, he began. I'll be leading the presentation myself, and we'll be going with a more traditional approach. But David, my analysis shows clear advantages to the human-centered approach. Morrison's executives specifically requested innovative solutions. The decision is final. I've already prepared a presentation focusing on operational efficiency improvements and strategic cost management. traditional approaches that won't jeopardize our relationship with Morrison's executive team. I felt my stomach drop. 6 months of work, embedded research, and innovative analysis were being discarded for a cookie-cutter approach that would deliver minimal results. This is a mistake. Patricia Morrison hired us specifically because she wanted fresh perspectives, not the same tired recommendations every consulting firm provides. David leaned forward, his expression hardening. Natalie, I've been patient with your unconventional methods, but this ends now. Your approach is unprofessional, time-consuming, and frankly, disrespectful to established business practices. If you can't adapt to our firm's standards, perhaps you should consider whether this is the right place for you. The threat was clear, but I couldn't let 6 months of groundbreaking work be wasted. I respectfully disagree. Give me the opportunity to present my findings, and let Morrison's team decide which approach they prefer. David stood up, his decision clearly made. This conversation is over. You'll observe the presentation on Friday, but I'll be leading it with our traditional analysis. And Natalie, I strongly suggest you use this time to reflect on whether your methods align with Sterling & Associates' values. Friday's presentation was a disaster. David's traditional approach recommended modest cost reductions through automation and minor workforce adjustments. The projected savings were minimal, and the timeline for implementation was extensive. Patricia Morrison listened politely, but I could see her disappointment. She'd been hoping for the innovative solutions that had attracted her to our firm in the first place. After the presentation, Patricia approached me privately. Natalie, I was hoping to see more of the unconventional analysis you mentioned during our initial conversations. This presentation felt like every other consulting report I've received. I wanted to explain what had happened, but professional loyalty prevented me from undermining David's presentation. I understand your disappointment, Patricia. Perhaps we could schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss alternative approaches. But there would be no follow-up meeting. On Monday morning, I found David waiting in my office with an HR representative. Natalie, we need to discuss your future with Sterling & Associates. The conversation was brief and brutal. David claimed that my resistant attitude and unprofessional approach had created concerns about my fit with the firm's culture. The HR representative mentioned feedback from colleagues about my difficult personality and disruptive methods. I knew this was retaliation for challenging David's decision, but I also knew that fighting it would be futile. Sterling & Associates had powerful connections throughout Chicago's business community, and David's family name carried significant weight. A wrongful termination lawsuit would be expensive, time-consuming, and potentially damaging to my reputation. We're prepared to offer a generous severance package in exchange for your signature on a non-disclosure agreement, the HR representative explained. 3 months' salary, continued health insurance, and a positive reference letter. I signed the papers, collected my belongings, and walked out of Sterling & Associates for the last time. The severance package would give me a few months to find new employment, but I knew my reputation in Chicago's consulting industry had been severely damaged. David's network was extensive, and word would spread quickly that I'd been let go for cultural fit issues. That evening, I sat in my apartment, staring at boxes of research materials from the Morrison Financial Group project. 6 months of innovative work, groundbreaking analysis, and potential industry disruption were now worthless. David's traditional approach would deliver minimal results, and Patricia Morrison would be disappointed with Sterling & Associates' performance. But as I reviewed my research, I realized something important. The problem wasn't my methods or my analysis. The problem was an industry structure that prioritized relationships and tradition over results and innovation. Consulting firms like Sterling & Associates were more concerned with maintaining existing power structures than delivering value to clients. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of looking for another job at an established consulting firm, I would start my own company. I would build a consulting practice based on the human-centered disruption analysis that David had rejected. I would prove that unconventional methods could deliver superior results, and I would do it by serving clients who valued innovation over tradition. The next morning, I called Patricia Morrison. Patricia, I wanted to follow up on our conversation about alternative approaches to your organizational challenges. Natalie, I thought Sterling and Associates had concluded their analysis. Sterling and Associates has concluded their analysis, but I've been thinking about your situation independently. I have some ideas that might interest you, and I'd like to discuss them as an independent consultant. Patricia was intrigued. She'd been disappointed with David's traditional recommendations and was open to exploring alternatives. We scheduled a meeting for the following week. I spent the next 6 days preparing the most comprehensive presentation of my career. I refined my human-centered disruption analysis, developed detailed implementation timelines, and created financial projections that demonstrated the superior value of my approach. This wasn't just about proving David wrong, it was about demonstrating that innovative consulting methods could deliver transformational results. The presentation took place in Patricia's office at Morrison Financial Group. I walked through my analysis methodically, explaining how embedding with frontline employees had revealed inefficiencies that traditional consulting approaches missed. I showed how eliminating redundant middle management positions while empowering customer-facing employees would reduce costs by 35% while improving service quality. Patricia listened intently, asking detailed questions about implementation challenges and timeline requirements. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair with a smile. Natalie, this is exactly the kind of innovative thinking I was hoping to see from Sterling and Associates. Your approach addresses our core challenges while maintaining our commitment to employee empowerment. I'm impressed. Thank you, Patricia. I believe this approach can deliver results that exceed traditional consulting methods. I'd like to move forward with your recommendations. What would you need to implement this analysis as an independent consultant? The contract was worth more than I'd earned in 6 months at Sterling and Associates. Patricia was willing to pay premium rates for innovative solutions, and she understood that my approach required time and resources that traditional consulting firms wouldn't invest. Over the next 8 months, I worked closely with Morrison Financial Group to implement my human-centered disruption analysis. The results exceeded even my optimistic projections. By eliminating redundant management layers and empowering frontline employees, Morrison reduced operational costs by 40% while improving customer satisfaction scores by 25%. Word spread quickly through Chicago's business community. Other executives began reaching out, curious about the innovative consulting approach that had delivered such impressive results for Morrison Financial Group. Within 6 months, I had more client inquiries than I could handle as a solo practitioner. I hired my first employee, then my second, then my third. Each new consultant was trained in human-centered disruption analysis, and each brought unique perspectives that enhanced our methodology. We weren't just copying traditional consulting practices, we were creating something entirely new. By the end of my first year as an independent consultant, Pierce Innovation Group had 12 employees and 18 active clients. Our revenue exceeded what I'd earned during my entire 4-year tenure at Sterling and Associates, and our client satisfaction scores were consistently higher than industry standards. The turning point came when Harvard Business Review published an article about our methodology. The piece, titled Human-Centered Disruption: The Future of Management Consulting, featured Morrison Financial Group as a case study and positioned our approach as a revolutionary alternative to traditional consulting methods. The article generated national attention. Business schools began incorporating human-centered disruption analysis into their curricula. Other consulting firms started attempting to replicate our methods. Industry conferences invited me to speak about innovative consulting approaches. David Sterling was not pleased. Sterling and Associates had lost 3 major clients to firms attempting to copy our methodology, and several senior consultants had left to start their own practices based on human-centered approaches. David's traditional methods suddenly seemed outdated and ineffective. The confrontation I'd been expecting finally came 18 months after my termination. David requested a meeting, ostensibly to discuss potential collaboration opportunities between Sterling and Associates and Pierce Innovation Group. We met at a downtown Chicago restaurant, the same place where Sterling and Associates had held client dinners during my tenure. David looked older, more stressed than I remembered. The confidence that had characterized his leadership was notably absent. Natalie, I wanted to discuss the possibility of bringing you back to Sterling and Associates, perhaps as a senior partner with autonomy to develop your innovative methodologies within our established framework. I smiled politely. That's an interesting proposition. David, what changed your mind about human-centered disruption analysis? David shifted uncomfortably. I may have been too hasty in my assessment of your methods. Recent market developments have shown that clients are increasingly interested in innovative approaches. You mean your clients are leaving for firms that offer human-centered analysis? The industry is evolving, and Sterling and Associates needs to evolve with it. Your expertise would be valuable as we transition to more contemporary consulting methodologies. I leaned forward, enjoying the role reversal. David, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in joining Sterling and Associates. My company is growing rapidly, and I have full autonomy to develop innovative solutions without worrying about maintaining relationships with executives who resist change. David's facade of politeness began to crack. Natalie, you're making a mistake. Sterling and Associates has resources and connections that your small firm can't match. We can offer you stability and growth opportunities that won't be available to an independent consultant. I'm curious, David. When you fired me, you said my methods were unprofessional and disrespectful to established business practices. What's changed? David's face reddened. The same expression I'd seen during our confrontation about the Morrison Financial Group presentation. Market conditions have changed. Clients are requesting approaches that align with your methodology. So you're saying that my methods were only unprofessional when they threatened your traditional approach, but now that they're profitable, they're worth pursuing. Business is about adapting to market demands. Natalie, I'm offering you an opportunity to benefit from Sterling and Associates' established client base and reputation. I stood up, the conversation clearly over. David, I built my company specifically to avoid the kind of thinking that prioritizes relationships over results. Sterling and Associates represents everything I'm working to change in this industry. Thank you for the offer, but I'm not interested. As I walked away, I felt the same satisfaction I'd experienced during my first successful presentation to Morrison Financial Group. David's offer was validation that my approach was not only effective, but transformational. The industry was changing, and firms like Sterling and Associates were struggling to adapt. The next phase of Pierce Innovation Group's growth exceeded my wildest expectations. We expanded to New York, Los Angeles, and Atlanta. Our methodology became standard practice at several Fortune 500 companies. Business schools began offering entire courses focused on human-centered disruption analysis. 2 years after starting my company, I was invited to speak at the National Management Consulting Conference, the same conference where David Sterling had been a keynote speaker for the past decade. This year, his firm wasn't even represented on the program. My presentation was titled Disrupting the Disruptors: How Human-Centered Analysis is Transforming Management Consulting. The audience included senior partners from every major consulting firm in the country, many of whom had attempted to replicate our methodology with varying degrees of success. I began with the story of Morrison Financial Group, explaining how traditional consulting approaches had failed to address their core challenges. I described the development of human-centered disruption analysis and demonstrated how this methodology had delivered superior results across multiple industries. The audience was engaged, asking detailed questions about implementation strategies and scalability challenges. These were the same executives who had dismissed my methods as unprofessional just 3 years earlier. Now they were taking notes and requesting follow-up meetings. During the Q&A session, someone asked about the resistance I'd encountered from established consulting firms. I smiled, thinking about David Sterling's reaction when I'd first proposed human-centered analysis. Innovation always faces resistance from established players, I replied. Traditional consulting firms are invested in maintaining existing power structures and relationships. They view change as a threat rather than an opportunity. But clients ultimately decide what delivers value, and they're increasingly demanding approaches that prioritize results over relationships. After the presentation, I was approached by representatives from several major consulting firms. They wanted to discuss partnership opportunities, acquisition possibilities, and collaboration arrangements. Everyone wanted access to the methodology that was reshaping the industry. But the most satisfying moment came when Patricia Morrison approached me after the presentation. "Natalie, I wanted to thank you for the work you did with our company. Your approach didn't just improve our operational efficiency, it transformed our entire organizational culture. We're now implementing human-centered analysis across all our business units." Patricia's endorsement was worth more than any acquisition offer. Morrison Financial Group had become a showcase for human-centered disruption analysis, and other executives were taking notice. Our methodology wasn't just delivering short-term improvements, it was creating sustainable competitive advantages. The following month, Pierce Innovation Group received an acquisition offer from McKinsey & Company. The offer was substantial, more money than I'd imagined when I started my company. But accepting would mean integrating our methodology into their traditional consulting framework, potentially diluting the innovative approach that had made us successful. I declined the offer and instead announced the expansion of Pierce Innovation Group into international markets. We opened offices in London, Toronto, and Sydney, bringing human-centered disruption analysis to clients worldwide. Each new office was staffed with consultants trained in our methodology, ensuring consistent quality and approach across all markets. The expansion was successful beyond our projections. International clients were even more receptive to innovative consulting approaches than domestic clients. European companies, in particular, appreciated the human-centered focus that aligned with their stakeholder-oriented business models. 3 years after my termination from Sterling & Associates, Pierce Innovation Group had become one of the fastest-growing consulting firms in the world. Our revenue exceeded Sterling & Associates' annual billings, and our client satisfaction scores consistently ranked among the highest in the industry. The ultimate validation came when Harvard Business School invited me to teach a semester-long course on innovative consulting methodologies. The course, titled Human-Centered Disruption, Theory and Practice, would be the first of its kind offered at a major business school. Preparing for the course required me to codify everything I'd learned about human-centered disruption analysis. I developed frameworks for identifying inefficiencies, methodologies for engaging frontline employees, and strategies for implementing organizational change. The course materials became the foundation for a book that would be published by Harvard Business Review Press. The book, Disrupting from Within: A Human-Centered Approach to Organizational Change, became a bestseller among business professionals. It was translated into 12 languages and adopted as required reading in MBA programs worldwide. The book's success established me as a thought leader in management consulting and organizational development, but the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. Patricia Morrison called to inform me that Morrison Financial Group had been selected as one of Fortune magazine's best companies to work for. The recognition was directly attributed to the organizational changes we'd implemented through human-centered disruption analysis. "Natalie, I want you to know that working with you changed everything for our company," Patricia said. "Not just our financial performance, but our entire approach to business. We're now more employee-focused, more customer-oriented, and more innovative than ever before." Patricia's words reminded me why I'd started Pierce Innovation Group. It wasn't just about proving David Sterling wrong or building a successful business. It was about demonstrating that consulting could be a force for positive organizational change rather than just a mechanism for maintaining existing power structures. As I reflect on the journey from termination to industry leadership, I'm struck by how David Sterling's betrayal ultimately became the catalyst for everything I've achieved. His resistance to innovation forced me to develop my own path, and his dismissal gave me the freedom to prove that unconventional methods could deliver superior results. The consulting industry has been transformed by human-centered disruption analysis. Traditional firms have adapted or disappeared, and new companies have emerged based on innovative methodologies. The change I envisioned during those dark days after my termination has become reality. Pierce Innovation Group continues to grow, now employing over 200 consultants across 6 countries. We've worked with Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations, always maintaining our commitment to human-centered approaches and results-driven solutions. The satisfaction I feel isn't just about professional success or financial achievement. It's about knowing that I've contributed to positive change in how organizations treat their employees and serve their customers. Every successful implementation of human-centered disruption analysis represents people whose working lives have been improved and customers whose experiences have been enhanced. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if David Sterling had been more open to innovation. If he'd supported my methodology instead of dismissing it, Sterling and Associates might have become a leader in the consulting industry's transformation. Instead, they've become a cautionary tale about the dangers of resisting change and prioritizing tradition over results. But I'm grateful for the path I've taken. The challenges I faced after leaving Sterling and Associates taught me resilience, creativity, and the importance of staying true to my values. The success of Pierce Innovation Group proves that innovative approaches can succeed even when they challenge established practices. Today, when I speak to young consultants and business school students, I emphasize the importance of thinking differently and challenging conventional wisdom. I tell them that setbacks can become catalysts for innovation, and that being fired for your eccentric approach might be the best thing that ever happens to your career. The industry revolution I'm leading isn't just about consulting methodology. It's about demonstrating that business can be a force for positive change. By prioritizing human-centered approaches and results-driven solutions, we're proving that success doesn't require sacrificing values or maintaining harmful power structures. As I look toward the future, I see endless opportunities to expand human-centered disruption analysis into new industries and markets. The methodology that David Sterling dismissed as unprofessional is now being adopted by organizations worldwide, creating better workplaces and more effective solutions to complex challenges. The revenge, if you can call it that, isn't about proving David Sterling wrong or seeing his firm struggle to adapt. The real revenge is knowing that the approach he rejected has become the foundation for positive change in countless organizations. Every successful implementation of human-centered disruption analysis is a testament to the power of innovation over tradition, results over relationships, and values over convenience. Sometimes the best revenge is simply proving that your vision was right all along, and that dismissing innovation in favor of tradition is a path to irrelevance. David Sterling taught me that lesson, though I doubt he intended to. For that education, I'm almost grateful.